to the Astrology of Terrible Things podcast with me, Carly Heath, and my friend and co-host, Jessie Devine. This is a podcast where we bring you stories of terrible things that have happened to people, and then we delve into the astrology of that terrible thing to try and figure out why bad things happen. Important note, this podcast comes with all of the trigger warnings. We talk about amusement park disasters, serial killers, catastrophic accidents, and all sorts of events that usually result in people dying. If any of that sounds like something you don't want to hear about, which is totally understandable, honestly, this whole podcast should not be listened to by anyone. Please do not listen to this show. Jessie is here to both laugh at me and occasionally contribute to banter. Please do laugh at me. This is why I'm here. This is what fuels my existence, is people laughing at me. And also to rein in, I've decided you're going to rein in my tangents and digressions, because after listening to the first episode, your girl Carly, I go on some tangents, some digressions.
Sometimes those tangents are so interesting. Like I'm like, no, I'm not even going to pull back on the reins. I'm into it.
Thank you. You know, we are both. You identify as well as a neurospicy person.
Neurodivergent.
Neurodivergent person. I like the phrase neurospicy. I saw that and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cute.
Neurospicy, yes.
Okay. And I think that that neurospicy people go on tangents. And I also am fully embracing my neurospiciness, because all summer long, I've just been surrounded by creative people, and all of them are like us. Like,
oh yeah, totally. We're the best people.
We are the best people. We are. And I noticed in your chart something that I had been kind of trying to figure out a lot recently, Jessie, is that
in my chart?
Yes, your chart. You're an equinox baby like I am. And what I mean by equinox baby is with our ascendant degrees are in the first degrees of cardinal signs across the Libra Aries axis. Mm-hmm. I've always been a little bit vain about how my Libra ascendant is 0 degrees Libra, because it's very fancy, because I have the exact
astrological elitism.
Yeah, I know. The exact degree of the autumn equinox. And that is the basis upon which all astrology was founded. The reason that we have the houses and the zodiac, it's all built around the equinoxes. And you have that too, Jessie, because your ascendant is in the very first degrees of Aries.
Oh, fascinating.
And you moved to Las Vegas, where if we use the rules of astrocartography, that then shifts your ascendant, because you moved to Las Vegas. And guess where your Las Vegas ascendant is? It's 0 degrees Aries. So I am 0 degrees Libra. You are 0 degrees Aries. We are exactly opposite each other. Mm-hmm. Magical on that magical equinox axis, upon which the whole foundation of astrology was built.
Which makes us uniquely qualified to talk about astrology and horrible, horrible things.
Which makes us also and I noticed, I started doing research. I noticed people who I think are extremely cool along that 0 degrees Libra Aries axis.
We're really selling ourselves here.
We are being vain, elitist, annoying people right now, but I just want to talk about how amazing that is, that we are both friends. We're both on this fancy axis point of the zodiac. Harry Houdini, Nostradamus. These are our people. And that axis point, that degree point, it puts us on the threshold between the imaginary realm and the material realm. We can bring the imagination into reality.
So do you think that there's a correlation between people that have this feature in their chart and creativity?
I absolutely think so, because I was going down the list, and there's a lot of very extremely talented people who are along that axis. And now there's a whole lot of things in a lot of people's chart that signal creativity, but I just think it's really neat. Both of us have this exact degree, your Jupiter is at 1 degree of Libra, so like just right next to my ascendant. It just makes sense that we get along so well, honestly. And
where in the chart does it say that like you take these things really seriously? And I like laugh at death. Like every time we do one of these, you're like, and then 17 people died. And I'm like,
that's the Jupiter. That's how you relate to people. You have Jupiter in your 7th house, which is the house that deals with other people. I have Jupiter in my 1st house, which is myself. Our Jupiters are opposite too. It's just
interesting.
It's really interesting. And also, I'm the Libra, so I'm the harmony. You're the Aries, so you're like the warrior.
Okay, so that tracks for my character, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and you're I do have Saturn in my 1st house, which gives me a certain like gravitas, I guess you could say.
One of these days we're gonna have to release our birth charts to the audience here, so they can roast us.
Yeah, I'm totally okay with releasing my birth chart and birth data, but I just think it's really really fascinating that we get along so well. Interestingly though, I think because of your Aries rising, the first time I met you, or the first time I kind of was aware of you, I was very intimidated by you, honestly.
I get that feedback a lot. I do get that feedback a lot. I've had a lot of like, oh, before I met you, I thought you hated me. And I'm like, how? Why? Or like, before I met you, I was so scared to talk to you. And I'm like, man, I am like the softest, like, I don't know. Okay, that's not true. I'm not always soft, but I definitely like, I feel like I always I want to talk to people. I want to be friends with people. And it's always just really interesting to get that feedback. When I do start talking to people, they're like, oh, you're actually nice. Like, you're actually cool. But I always just thought you were so scary. And I'm like, man.
Honestly, you're very cool. I thought the first time I thought you are extremely cool. And
that is not an adjective I would use to describe myself either. That's so funny. But thank you.
And confident, and you have a sort of biting, clever way of interacting, which makes you seem very smart, and you seem like you could cut through the bullshit really well. And it seems like you're not going to take bullshit from anyone. And I love that about you. But it was
the last part. That's true for sure.
So anyway, I saw that. I thought it was really cool. I'm embracing embrace your equinox powers.
Okay.
Some random questions that came up as I'm just like talking through this. Do you feel like an alien on Earth?
Yes.
I know, right?
Literally all the time. I feel like in any social situation, and I always thought this was just like the autism. I don't know, but I've always just like in a situation and I'm like, how would a normal person respond to this? Or like, what would a normal human say to that question? And then I'm like, you're supposed to be I just have this like internal dialogue.
Something I've been like internally thinking in my brain recently is like, when I do humanness really well, I'm like, oh, you did a really good impersonation of a human.
Yeah, yes. Gold star.
Time.
Amazing.
I've lately got this visual in my head of my life, my existence, my awareness of how I work in the world is like I'm standing at the threshold of a door between like the realm that doesn't exist and the realm of the material world. And like the door is always peaked open a little bit to the realm that doesn't exist. And I can just kind of go into the realm that doesn't exist a lot. I don't know if that's resonating with you.
Like I don't think that I have the same visual metaphor, but I feel like I know like what you're talking about. And I definitely think that like as I like get older and have become like more corporate in like my day job and things like that, I've had to just like stay in the material world more, which is like not necessarily where I like to be.
Yeah.
But no, that's definitely a thing. For sure.
Which brings us to, before we won't go into too many digressions about our charts, but I
do want
to talk about the Venus retrograde summer that we have all been through, which I feel like Venus retrograde is your chance to learn what is your toxic trait. The Venus retrograde kind of started around the end of July, and we kind of finished up with it like beginning of October-ish, a little bit end of September, beginning of October-ish. I use very wide nets when talking about the boundaries of the Venus retrograde, because it's there's a shadow period, which we won't get into. We don't want to bore people, but it's this time where Venus becomes extremely powerful, and also there's a period during the Venus retrograde where that harmonizing instinct goes away briefly. And so I feel like it exposes things in your psyche and yourself. I think especially for women. I'll kind of go into my I'll go into my experience with it. So Venus retrograde happened in my 11th house, and during that period, because of the type of work I do, I have been surrounded by hundreds, in many cases, actors and creatives and performers, and it started off this period of like just the absolutely mind-blowingly wonderful period where I feel like we're all activists for a cause, and connecting with that, and I love that energy. It's given me this chance to see the words that I write being said by people in crowds of a lot of people, and they are laughing at my jokes. But it's been super rewarding. But I've been seeking out constant feedback in the form of the internet. I want to see what people are saying about my words and what people are saying about the things that are going out public that I have written. And because of the nature of my job, I'm a kind of a ghostwriter, right?
Right.
I don't get credit for
it's kind of looking for this like recognition piece that isn't there.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm getting the feedback in that, like, there was this moment during the Venus retrograde cycle where I was in the audience, 4,000 people laughing at my jokes. I was feeling so high from it, but then I needed to go on the internet and seek out what people were saying about the thing. At the time, I was tricking my brain into thinking, oh, I'm just seeking out this internet feedback because I want to learn and grow as an artist and as a creative, and I want to do better. I realize that the reason that I'm seeking out the internet's commentary on my work is because I seek the dopamine hit of someone saying something nice about something I did. And that
I mean, that's reasonable. I don't know.
That is what I'm searching for, like a drug.
Unfortunate.
I feel like my drug, my thing that I'm craving, which is probably very unhealthy, is a stranger saying something nice about a creative thing that I've done. And that can lead me down so many distracting things.
Oh, no, absolutely. Because once you get in that cycle of searching for that external validation, it's really, really difficult to come back to a place where you're able to validate yourself, you know?
And it's a huge problem with my fiction writing. I can't say this is actually really good and I'm going to be done with it unless I get a lot of people saying that this is really good, which you do not get in publishing.
Which you never get. No, you never get that in publishing.
Yeah.
You could probably publish it, like go through the entire very difficult process. Like, oh, I don't know how much our audience knows about publishing, but like you guys, it is a trip. Like you can go through the very difficult process of getting your book represented, getting a publishing, like a deal, getting even good marketing, which is really difficult to get, even selling a bunch of copies, and you're still going to have people saying shit about it. That's not positive. So it's just like, it's really difficult to get that kind of feedback that you're looking for on fiction.
Which brings us to, eventually we're going to get back to our point, which this is the Astrology of Terrible Things podcast, where we talk about terrible things that have happened, and then we talk about the astrology of it. But we've been bullshitting for the first few minutes, just talking about how astrology affects our life. Jessie, have you noticed anything about Venus retrograde this summer for you?
Okay, where did you say this was affecting my, which house was this in again?
House, which deals with creativity, and your fifth house ruler, which is the sun, is in your seventh house, which deals on one-on-one relationships with other people, and it's being provided for by a Venus in your eighth house, which is shared resources. So I'm sure there's been something related to your way of having fun, creativity, things that you create with a partner and the shared resources that you develop with that partner, and probably something related to your home as well, since that kind of all ties back in there.
So something I realized about myself just through like some therapy and like personal like reading, some like self-help and things like that, is that I think a toxic trait resulting from like abandonment issues and trauma.
See, my abandonment issues too. Like that's
yeah, instantly triggered.
too. Yeah.
Thank you, Venus.
I
really
not to interrupt you, but like that's why I'm seeking the dopamine hit of approval, because I never got that as a child. Like I never got
oh yeah, absolutely.
validation, emotional validation. So I'm like, okay, I need to perform and create and make other people laugh in order to get the validation that I never got from.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I feel like I see these things play out in personal relationships, in my relationship with my husband, and in friendships, where I just am constantly seeking reassurance and constantly seeking like I have no object permanence for the fact that people like me.
Yes. Oh my God.
And
yes,
so,
exactly.
So I'm always like, oh, when I'm with the person, I'm like, oh, this is great. Like I said, like it could be romantic relationship with my husband. It could be my friends. My parents are kind of a different story that we're not going to go into my parents on the podcast. We'll spend the entire time talking about my parents. But even like my friendships, it's just like, and I have a tendency to never give people the benefit of the doubt. So like which is something that played out through this Venus retrograde, where like if they, bail on, or if I perceive they've bailed on me, or they've canceled plans, or they, even like hypervigilance to like tone shifts in conversations and things like that. I'll be like, oh, they don't like me. Oh, this must mean that like our relationship is not important to them. Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And for everybody listening, being like, God, you need therapy. It's like, don't worry, I'm in it. Like,
I love what you said about there's no object permanence in relationships, or that's
for people's affection.
Exactly. Like
I
have almost no object permanence in my sense of self, honestly. I need to create things because I do not exist without people reacting to the things that I create.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. I don't think I have that for myself necessarily, for like the sense of who I am and like what my identity is, but I definitely have that for like, I'll be like, oh, like we're besties, right? Or like we're friends or something. And then the next day, like, did something happen to where that's not true anymore? Like did you think about our interactions and change your mind? Like I have no evidence for that, like where, you know what I mean? But it doesn't stop the intrusive thought. Anyway,
I feel like anyone would abandon me if I say like
the wrong thing
wrong. And that person would be like, oh, that person is unforgivably canceled and I do not want them in my life.
Or just like, or even more like just like, oh, too weird, like, oh, they're just like, that's just not for me. I'm like, I could almost deal with being like unforgivably canceled, especially if it was something that I believed in. You know what I mean? Like if I said something and they were like, oh, we don't like you because you said, abortion is a human right. I don't know. Like if it was something that I believed in and they were like, oh, I hate you because of that. I'd be like, fine, hate me. That's cool. But like, if it was just like, your personality is just ew, then I would be like, oh my God.
We learned that we have avoidant attachment styles and avoidant.
I think mine's anxious.
Attachment styles.
I think that the point for me about like any retrograde really, or any astrologically difficult period of time, is that typically I think that if you are willing to just roll with it and learn from it, you can figure out something beneficial to take from it. Like for me it was like, yeah, you definitely should be back in therapy. I've actually been through a really good period in my life for probably like 5 or 6 years with my mental health, where I've been off of a medication and managing anxiety and depression. Not to say that, I mean, just to make this like a little soapbox for a second, like if you need mental health medication, go for it. Like please do that. I was on it for like a long period of my life and it was really helpful. But anyway, digression. I think that going through this period with Venus retrograde and having these realizations about myself, it was a good moment for me to be like, there's still some things that I need to unpack in therapy. I should probably get back into it. So
That's
and that's what I'm
amazing.
doing. Yeah.
That's amazing. Awesome. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
Like your therapist?
Well, I actually have our first consultation on Monday.
Good for you. Yay, I'm so excited for you.
Thanks. I'm pretty pumped.
That's awesome. I also learned about Venus retrograde too, is with my creative stuff, I have in the past leaned very into the angsty, navel gazing, interior sort of thing. And I'm realizing that the direction I want to go with my creativity in the future is that I want to lean more into comedy, and I want to actually exploring mental health issues is something that came up as I was kind of thinking about my next novel that I want to write. Like, and I think I want to definitely lean more into the comedy. And I was thinking just like these exaggerated circumstances that illustrate what's going on mentally healthily with me and my issues. And instead of being so angsty as I've done in the past with my writing, being ridiculous. And
I love that. I love that.
it makes me so much happier to go into those directions with it. So yeah. Oh, so in addition to the Venus retrograde exposing our toxic traits, I have a crazy like Venus retrograde story. As I was at these events where I'm watching my speeches, the things I've written be out there and in the public. I'm in the audience videotaping and all of that. I was going on the internet to try and find other video clips of people recording the thing. And I found video clips from someone who was standing right next to me and who I did not know. And I saw that this person's name was Carly. And I saw
weird
that this person is in the same fandom that I am in. And I reached out to her, and we are like so in common. Like, she's very active in the activist movement that is happening right now. And she does so much for like with the fandom and the activism stuff. And I'm like, this is amazing. Someone who's named Carly, we have all these things in common, who is standing right next to me, and who
that's interesting
on the internet.
That's wild.
And so super wild. We're now like BFFs, best friends. And I just thought that was amazing. And I have a feeling she is from the Southern Hemisphere. I have not been brave enough to ask. She mentioned it at some point. But the Southern Hemisphere is also our magic Aries Libra axis thing.
Oh, is she in our little club, our 0 degree club?
I'm gonna ask her if she's in our 0 degree club. But also me interacting with people from the Southern Hemisphere has to do with our equinox thing. Your husband's from the Southern Hemisphere.
No, yeah, I spent 4 years down there for sure. In Brazil, for anybody who doesn't know that.
Yeah. And so here's the thing. Whenever there's an equinox, like big kind of changes happen in my life.
Sure.
And I was also being aware that like every time there's an equinox, I encounter people from the Southern Hemisphere. So pay attention to this in your life, because obviously it does.
Oh, that's probably true. I mean, yeah, it's so funny. You're talking about like I met this girl, Carly, and we're in the similar thing, and we have all these similarities, and something like I can see how this like attaches to like the Venus retrograde and the astrology of it all, but also like part of my head is just like, man, the simulation is breaking down. Like I can't.
Oh, right.
You're like,
right.
You just like meet people and you're like, this is just lazy. Like, even give her a different name. Like, come on.
Whoever is running it right now has not had enough coffee. And they're just they're just repeating certain codes, and they're just pasting.
Yes. Or like, I don't even know, like how I had a conversation with one of my friends the other day that was like, I said something along those lines, and he's like, man, I had a full conversation with a complete NPC the other day. Like, I was in the grocery store and like their dialogue was just straight NPC dialogue. Like, hand. And I was like, I bet you if I walk away from this person and then come back, we're going to have the same conversation.
Yeah. So I met Doppelcarly. I became aware that whenever there's an equinox, a big thing happens in my life, and I tend to encounter people from the southern hemisphere. So anyway, we're getting off on tangents. You're supposed to rein me back.
Okay, I'm sorry, but see, this is the problem. Like, I'm interested. Like, I can't.
Fascinating. Okay, so what we're going to do things a little bit different this time. I do have an event that I'm going to be sharing with you all of a terrible thing, but Jessie is also doing an event, but we're going to do a little reversal. Jessie's going to share the chart of an event, and I'm going to look at the chart and I'm going to describe the event, and I'm going to see how close I get to describing the event that Jessie has picked.
Yes. So this is my favorite thing. Like, okay, so this is the first time we're doing this. So Carly has no idea what event this is. And I have removed all of the identifying information from the chart. So there's no date, there's no time, there's no year, nothing. And we can maybe figure out a way to share the chart so that everybody can see that I am not lying.
We'll put it in the show notes or something.
Okay, there's nothing on this chart that would tell Carly what, when, or where this even happened. So I just sent that over to you if you want to check it out right now.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. This is really interesting because I noticed that whenever we become interested in certain events, the astrology of that event mirrors what the astrology is that's happening right now. And
Ooh.
you have chosen a chart where the nodes are in Venus or in Libra and Aries. And we have our nodes have just shifted. We just had an eclipse in Libra and Aries across the axis. And we spent the whole first portion of this talking about the Libra Aries axis because you and I are.
You know, people aren't going to believe that it's random.
So this is completely random. I'm noticing a lot of things. Well, let's first start talking about sect, because that's always a good place to start. This is a day chart with the sun in Aries. So that means, since it's a day chart, the most malefic part of the chart is going to be wherever Mars is. So in this case, Mars is located in the 5th house, which deals with children, romance, creativity. It's a very debilitated Mars in Libra and retrograde. So this Mars is opposite Mercury, so I'm getting some child signatures in here. I'm curious to know if children will play a role in this. I'm noticing. And then we can also look at what the best part of the chart is, and that is a very, very exalted Jupiter. But it's a Jupiter that's applying to an opposition with Pluto in the 8th house, which is death vibes, it's being provided for by a debilitated moon in the 6th house, which is the house of bad fortune. Being ruled by Mars. So we would love to be like, oh, that Jupiter going to save the day? No, that Jupiter is gonna just be doing the work of Mars, which is in real bad shape. Since Mars is being provided by Venus, let's see.
For those of us that are not astrology experts, can you explain a little bit about like, what does that mean when you say like, oh, this is being provided for by this, and how in your expertise, how would that affect this chart?
Let's say you have a planet in a certain sign. The planet itself is trying to do the work of that planet. So Venus is trying to do the work of Venus, which is usually about harmony, about love, about creativity, about joy, beauty.
Sure.
But if Venus is in Mars's sign, Venus has Mars stuff to work with, which is war, weapons. Venus is in Mars's house. So imagine you are a pretty princess Venus, and you have to go house sit for Mars.
Okay.
Mars's house is full of knives.
Okay.
Your impulse as Venus is to decorate and cook some lovely treats and put on some music and do something creative, but
Mhm.
all you have to work with is knives and okay? So that's kind of gives you a little picture of how Venus works in a house and a sign that it doesn't usually go into and do.
Okay.
And this gets even more complicated because then let's say so Venus is in Mars's house, but where's Mars? Mars is over somewhere else in someone else's house. So if Venus needs to call on Mars, does it say like, okay, where's the coffee maker? Where's the circuit breaker? Where's the stuff?
And Mars is like pissed off because it's like doing something it doesn't like to be doing.
Yeah, if Mars is extremely pissed off somewhere else,
It's just a downward spiral. Like
yeah, increasingly difficult. So uh in this case, okay, we have basically Mars is being extra bad in this particular chart because in this case we have Mars, who is the warrior in the house of Venus, which is the pretty princess. And so the warrior is like, okay, just come back from battle. I need to sharpen my knives. I need to restore my weapons, but I'm in a pink bedroom that's full of fluffy faux fur everywhere. And so Mars is like calling Venus, okay, where's my knife sharpener? And Venus is over in Jupiter's sign, and Venus is like, I'm on drugs right now, actually.
Venus is partying hard. It cannot help
Venus
Mars.
is in Pisces. Venus is on a boat and has just taken some ayahuasca and is
Okay.
having trouble making complete sentences right now, and the connection isn't great because you're at sea. And then so Venus, the reason Venus is actually not doing well isn't necessarily because Venus is in Jupiter sign. Usually Venus in Jupiter sign is actually doing really good. But what's problematic is Venus then has to call Jupiter because she's in Jupiter sign, and Jupiter is being provided for by a moon that is very debilitated in the place that it doesn't like to be in, which is Mars' sign of Scorpio. So
Okay.
you kind of everything is going back to Mars.
Okay.
So Mars is pissed off because it's not in a sign that it likes to be in, a house that it likes to be in. And when it tries to get answers, it has to go through all of these woo-woo people on boats, people, doing ayahuasca
And then it ends up getting back to
about their
itself.
feelings. And then it ends up going back to itself, but it has to go through the moon, which is like this super watery, super up in their feelings thing. And it's like Mars is like, I just want to fucking sharpen my knives. And everyone is having feelings right now, and I cannot even deal with this.
So in real world terms,
In real world
how do
terms.
you think this
So
affect if you're trying to figure out the event from this? What do you see?
well, I'm going to look at the ascendant, but just by looking at where the most malefic planet is, which is Mars, doing extremely malefic things in a house of beauty, in a house of feminine harmony, in a house in the fifth house, which is about creativity, love, passion. I'm like, okay, something in that creativity, beauty, fashion, children. I'm kind of getting a child signature in here. Something very bad happened there, and it's I'm thinking it's a group that has been involved, because now we're going to turn to the ascendant. So
Okay.
we're gonna now see who is involved here. There is the ascendant, which is like the thing is Gemini, which is a sign that's ruled by Mercury, And that Mercury is in the 11th house, which is ruled by Mars. So this lets us know that it's something involving a group. 11th house thing is big. So a south node, so an ending with a group, with Uranus there and the sun there. There's like a father figure signature there. The Mercury opposite Mars. Can I ask you, is there something like death involving children in this?
Yes. A group of children. Yes.
I want to say a group of children. And is there a situation where there's law enforcement involved and law enforcement is not doing what they need to be doing to stop the thing?
Kind of like authority not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Authority not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Okay.
Definitely. What makes you say that?
The master of the nativity in this thing, which is like the planet that's in charge of basically everything in this chart, is Mars.
Okay.
And so Jupiter, which is usually like the good guy who comes into the picture to save the day, is not doing what it should be doing because it's has to go through Mars. It's being provided for by Mars.
Okay.
So the idea of authority not doing what it should. So there's the law is not doing what it should. There's father figures not doing what they should. There are, and it's also that Jupiter opposite Pluto dynamic. So there's this just so much strong death signature in this chart. There is boundaries not being in place. There is, if there is a mother figure or any sort of nurturing figure, that is not doing what it should because it's in the sixth house of bad fortune. And it's being provided for by Mars. Which makes me ask, how did the death of a group of children happen?
Do you want me to answer the question, or are you trying to go further?
I'm going to figure it out. So much water here. Like I almost want to say, ask if there's like water involved in some way.
Do you want me to answer?
So death of group of children. So my answer, death of a group of children, authorities and failing. I want to say maybe there was a school involved too, and something to do with water. So what's the situation? Tell us the story.
Okay, I'm gonna apologize now for all my pronunciations because this is like an international event, and a lot of this is in Korean. The event was April 16th, 2014, when the Sewol boat sank.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Oh my god!
So the pertinent information here. So we had, what did you say? Your main things were children, a group of children, tons of death, a father figure or authority in law not doing what they're supposed to be doing, no, boundaries not being set in place, and a shit ton of water. So obviously the ocean. Let me just give you some little statistics here.
Isn't just astrology amazing?
Yes. But listen to this. You're gonna lose your mind. Okay. Out of 476 passengers and crew, 306 died in the disaster, including 250 students from Danwon High School.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So as soon as you were like, I think there's a group of children that died, I was like, yeah, a pretty big group.
Oh my god.
Not to laugh at that. No, okay.
No,
here's the thing about this podcast, you guys, that I just want to say, since we're very early in the recording of this podcast, is that like I laugh at horrible things because like otherwise I would just be crying all the time, like about life, about the world, about like every terrible thing that happens every single day. And so I don't mean to make light of something that was awful and that probably still affects families and people today. I just yeah, it's too, what do you do? You know, it's like laughing at a funeral. Inappropriate responses to stress, I guess.
Yeah, it is. And you know, we came up with this word in another podcast that I was on called dichotomy, which is
Yeah,
the impulse to, when you're going down into a real dark place, to make a joke, to stop it,
Yes.
to stop.
Yes. Yes.
It's a
Exactly. Okay.
human instinct, and we cannot deny that it does exist. And as equinox children, we always want to make the balance. So whenever things start to go too far one direction or the other, we always feel the need to bring it back.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
we're not laughing at the death of children. We're laughing at, oh my God, I saw just some circles and planets, and I
And you
was
figured
able
this
to
out. Yeah,
figure out what happened. That's
definitely.
amazing. The universe.
Okay, let me just, you're gonna like, I feel like there's more details. Like as I was listening to you, I'm just fascinated. Okay.
Tell
So
me
you
the
have
whole story of what this happened, this boat thing.
okay. So you can also, if you're listening, look up this event on Wikipedia, and it was on like every news source ever. So go ahead and look that up. We'll include some things in the notes that you can check it out. Okay, so this was it started at about 8:30 a.m. on that morning. This is a boat that traveled back and forth a lot. It was owned by let's see, I can definitely not say the name of this company. But it was owned by a shipping company. And it was originally a ferry from 1994 to 2012. It was a transport ship for cargo and passengers, but after it was bought in, let's see, 2012, by this company, they made a bunch of modifications to it, including adding several new decks that increased its capacity. And there were like claims that those modifications were illegal, but that wasn't really, it wasn't really proven. But there's been some like questions about whether or not that had an effect 2 years later when it sank. You can read a play-by-play on the Wikipedia starting Wednesday morning at 7:30 a.m. when the third mate of the ship took over watch from the previous team. Okay, so it starts there, and it goes over all of this stuff is recorded by a lot of different devices, and you can see like the speed that the ship was going. You can see when like distress calls were made, and really the main thing that happened is that it tried to take a turn. They took it off the autopilot steering, okay, and went to manual steering, and then they tried to make this turn and it didn't go correctly, and the ship just literally tilted and then started to sink. Now the things that I found fascinating with your analysis of it is that a major part of the blame, and he actually got a life sentence for this, was placed on the captain. So when you're talking about father figure not doing what they were supposed to be doing, he abandoned the ship.
Oh my gosh. Oh my.
Yeah. And then besides that, about your, when you said like the boundaries were not in place that needed to be in place, they didn't give an evacuation order for like half an hour. So I actually found a quote about this. The captain initially told passengers to stay in their rooms and waited more than half an hour to issue evacuation. By then, the ship had tilted so much that roughly 240 people. Oh, at this point, this was in the New York Post. At this point, a bunch of those people were still missing. Anyway, their belief is that because of that order to stay in your rooms and not evacuate that was given by the captain, that a bunch of those people, like 240 people, got trapped inside.
Oh my God. Oh
Which
my
is
God.
just
I mean,
horrible.
and being trapped is a very Saturnian thing.
Mm-hmm.
Being being trapped, and that's Saturn in a water sign, Scorpio. So being trapped in water. Oh my God.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
so amazing, you guys, astrology is real. I know that you're coming to the
This is the thesis of the podcast. Astrology is real.
I know this is like probably speaking to the choir, but like, you guys, how can anyone deny that astrology doesn't work when clearly I've been given a chart that's some circles and planets, and I was able to accurately describe the event that took place in that chart. I will tell you my story now. This
Okay.
is rein me in if I go into too many details. But this also deals with a similar thematic thing. This is the Erfurt Latrine Disaster of 1184. And an important thing for all of us to visualize before we get into this is something known as a cesspit. It's important that we understand what a cesspit is. A
My
cesspit
God.
is a large underground holding tank that's used in the collection and storage of feces, excreta, or fecal sludge. The pit can
Yuck.
be lined with bricks or concrete or covered with a slab, and it needs to be emptied frequently when it's used as an underground holding tank. So are you visualizing?
I am so concerned about this, Carly.
An underground holding tank of human waste.
I already don't want to know, but
And,
I do want to
and
know.
And in cases where, we have large populations of humans dumping their waste into a holding tank, we have to be very cautious about that waste going into groundwater where people will
Ugh.
eventually drink that groundwater
Oh
and
my
use
God.
it for, life. So I want you to picture this giant cesspit of human waste that has a layer of surface scum on it. You have
Oh my
eaten
God.
tomato soup before, and
Oh my God, Carly.
the skin that appears upon the
Stop.
tomato soup. Imagine, if you will, that tomato soup is not red, but it is
No,
brown
please.
because it is
Oh,
human waste.
no.
And the scum on the top is the scum that's created by human waste. Okay. And above
I'm
this
never gonna eat that again.
is a communal latrine, which is benches with holes in those benches, upon
First of all, why?
dudes will sit and they will poop into the latrine below.
Oh my God, I have so many questions.
I need you all to visualize.
I don't I am and I'm mad that I am.
Are these cesspits ever drained and cleaned out? According to Extra History, this video on YouTube that I looked up, probably not.
But they're
So
supposed to be is the
I decided to just on my own look into how long this particular cesspit in this case that we're going to be talking about had been brewing, had been fermenting.
Oh my God.
Imagine a big, wine barrel where you ferment grapes into wine. Well, imagine that, but if it's human feces. Okay, this is why this podcast comes with all the trigger warnings. So
Yeah, okay. I could have used the
I'm just here to torture you. See, you're laughing, so you must be enjoying.
Yeah. Remember, inappropriate responses to stress.
So the Petersberg Citadel, which is where this event took place, had been constructed around 1060, so about 124 years before this disaster hit. The building was burned down in 1080 and rebuilt in 1103 to 1147. So the cesspit was probably either between 81 years old and 37 years old,
And still being
fermenting,
used or
brewing.
just sitting there?
Yeah, it'd been collecting.
Oh
For
my
about
God.
81 to 37 years. So um, imagine you're 81
No. I've imagined enough already, Carly.
using the same pit to defecate in,
Oh my
and that
God.
pit never being emptied in his entire.
Well, how would you empty it? Like that's also my question. Like, how would you, because I mean, we're talking like pre like septic pump
Yeah,
system.
medieval.
Yeah, like
I went into research. This is my skill, is to go into digressions and give you all the unnecessary facts that you need to not know about this situation. So did this building, the Petersberg Citadel, did it smell really bad? Probably. And
I love that you looked this up.
There's no regulation of cesspit construction until the 18th century, and when the need to address that was when the need to address sanitation became apparent. So I'm guessing it took people a few centuries to figure out this smells so bad and is probably really bad for human health.
Yeah, this is making us sick.
That's because of the patriarchy. Honestly, I feel like before the patriarchy,
I'm here for this digression. I'm here for it.
egalitarian society where all genders were equally participating, and I feel like cesspits probably got cleaned out, or there was a different sort of way of doing things. I feel like the cesspit construction.
Cesspits are a patriarchal problem.
So before the construction reforms were introduced in the 19th century. Liquid waste would seep into the ground, and then leaving behind the solid waste of the cesspit, which made the removal, because it was all solid, a little bit easier.
Makes sense.
And because tanning leather for bookbinding was an important part of monastic life in the 12th century, urine was usually collected in piss pots and used for tanning. So the dudes in this monastery, they would pee into the piss pots. They would use that for tanning, and then the latrine and the cesspit was used for the solid, for the human waste, the solid.
Okay, like this is gonna be an unpopular opinion, but like the whole piss pot thing with the using it for tanning, I feel like it's gonna get like ew reactions, but like isn't pee sterile like when it comes out of your body? I'm pretty sure it is. I'm Googling that right now.
Okay, look that up for us. For wiping, when you went to
Oh no, that's a myth.
your latrine, you would use rags, dried cabbage leaves, straw, and moss were probably used. And monastic latrines in particular had a reputation for being noxious, probably because monasteries are a big old sausage fest.
Oh my God.
Dudes are dirty. That's a
hilarious.
huge sexist thing to say, and I admit that. But again, that's the patriarchy is dirty, not necessarily dudes. I think in an egalitarian society where dudes are allowed to be their
for
whole
themselves.
selves. Yeah.
Where self-care isn't like weak.
Yeah. I feel like dudes would be clean in a non-patriarchal society, but because we're in a patriarchal society that like suppresses everything Venusian, everything clean and beautiful and harmonious, dudes are encouraged to be dirty and focus on
tough.
And they aren't supposed to care about those Venusian things. So this is also why we need to defeat the patriarchy.
True. Also, just for any of you that were still curious, that is a rumor. Human adult urine is not sterile. That is a medical myth.
Well, in conclusion,
so it is a little bit gross.
So Cesspits accidents have happened throughout history a lot. Also in Wikipedia, recently in Suffolk County, New York, most households there still use cesspools for waste drainage, and cesspool collapses have occurred in the area. Even in as recently as December 8th, 2009, when two workers in a decommissioned cesspit were trapped, requiring a 2-hour rescue mission.
Oh my God.
Since 1998, 6 cases have been recorded of cesspools collapsing and sucking human residents that had been standing over them into the cesspit, injuring a total of 7 people, killing one in 2001, killing another in 2007, and killing another in 2010. Recent
New fear unlocked.
Killed in cesspits. New fear unlocked.
Yeah, this is like somebody tell Edgar Allan Poe. Like I need a new story.
On June 1st, 2011, 2 teenagers from Suffolk County neighborhood called Farmingville drowned after becoming overwhelmed by fumes and trapped in a backyard cesspool measuring 16 feet deep. So,
oh my God,
you've gotten plenty of background by now on cesspits.
Thank you for that.
For the latrine disaster. Was it interesting, or did I go on to a digression, which I'm known to do?
It's not that it wasn't interesting. It's just the topic.
Erfurt is the capital of the largest city in the central German state of Thuringia. It's the Landgraviate, which is a noble title that means land count of Thuringia. And it was the largest state in the region between 1131 and 1247. So if you want to kind of put a picture in your head of what Thuringia is all about, think of bratwursts. The bratwurst comes from Thuringia. As I said, this is a sausage fest.
I mean, that kind of sausage is fine.
And it's also a foresty area. There's a lot of forests around there.
Forested. Got it.
Forest sausages. A forest of sausages. Yes.
Okay.
Here is where you'll find the Petersberg Citadel. It's one of the largest and best preserved town fortresses in Europe. During the 12th century, it was the site of a medieval Benedictine monastery. The first recorded evidence of the monastery from 1060, but it may have existed a long time before that.
Prior to that, okay.
Okay, so background. Now it is July 26th, a balmy summer in
gross.
For the average temperature, because I go into so many details, is about 75 degrees. I imagine without air conditioning, 75 degrees out in a room packed. This is going to be a packed room full of hundreds of people. One story above a latrine, which is dumping into a giant cesspool.
Great.
So
excellent.
These people have traveled from afar. They are dudes. The BO is probably off the charts. The latrine down below is probably fuming. It's 75 degrees. This building is primarily used by monks for monk stuff, but on that balmy July morning, Henry VI, the King of England, who is 19 years old, is going to use the building to settle a land dispute between Landgrave Louis III and Archbishop Conrad Wittlesback. And by the way, these two dudes, Landgrave Louis III, he's like in his 30s, and Archbishop Conrad Wittlesback, he's like in his 60s.
Okay.
30-year-old, 60-year-old fighting land dispute. They're called
19-year-old guy,
19-year-old king to settle the land dispute. Can you imagine?
Oh my God.
Can you imagine even just you and me fighting right now? And we're like, okay, we got to settle this dispute. Let's bring in the 19-year-old.
Let's bring in a 19-year-old boy. Yeah. Or like any 19-year-old at all. Like just.
By the way, though, for those who are into the astrology, when you're 19, you are in your 8th house year, which is the house of death. And so frequently people who are 19 experience a lot of death in their lives at that point. So every nobleman from across the Holy Roman Empire was invited, because these sorts of land disputes, they're spectator events. There's no internet, there's no TV back then. People need to be entertained, and there are just only so many comedians to go around. So they're like, let's watch this 19-year-old settle this dispute between this 30-year-old and the 60-year-old.
I mean, reasonable though. Like
sounds like a good time. So a lot of people were there, way more than a few monks who regularly made use of the building. The meeting was to be held on the 2nd floor above the latrine. Meeting room.
Why?
Latrine.
Poor planning.
Cesspool. Visualize the 3 layers of hell.
Hell sandwich.
Henry VI takes his position on a little stone alcove at the front. The rest of the floor is made of wood. Interesting facts about King Henry. So he's born November 1165. He's 19. He's either a Scorpio or a Sagittarius. We don't have the exact date of his birth. He was born Jupiter and Sag, opposite Pluto and Gemini, which is interestingly, that's very similar signature to the chart you showed me earlier of the boat.
Thinking accident. Of the ship.
Nice. Yeah. And
Henry VI is a boat accident.
Isn't that fucking amazing though? Whenever we talk about like astrology, we're like, oh, I'm randomly interested in this astrological event.
Nothing is random.
We're looking at a chart that like mirrors the astrology event of another thing that we're interested in. So you know, your boat thing had Jupiter opposite Pluto. This thing that I'm talking about right now, Jupiter opposite Pluto. What does Pluto deal with? Pluto deals with death. Pluto deals with Jupiter deals with leaders, law, like kings. But Pluto
and
also,
boat captains.
Yeah, sea captains. Pluto also deals with waste. Pluto deals with like the underworld too. So that's really interesting. So Saturn's in Capricorn, Mars is in Libra, which was in Libra in your boat accident as well. It's not fascinating. It is fascinating. We're picking the same astrological aspects to discuss randomly without talking about them beforehand. That
is fascinating.
So Mars in Libra and Mars was in Libra like a few weeks ago for us. In 1191, this king, he will go on to become the Holy Roman Emperor at 26 years old. And in 1194, around the time of his Saturn return, those of you who don't know what I talk about when I say Saturn return, this is the most difficult period of your life that happens when you're around 30 years old. It's the time where if you can visualize Saturn, who's like your big stern daddy planet, who keeps you in line, who tells you right from wrong. Saturn, has made its way all the way around the zodiac and has returned to the place in the sky it was in when you were born. And you can kind of visualize it as the teacher left the classroom to leave you to your work, and then
for 30 years.
Yeah, the teacher then comes back to the classroom and is checking on you and is like, so did you do your assignment? And if you didn't do your assignment, life will be hard for you. And if you did your assignment, life will still be hard for you because Saturn's an asshole. But you will at least benefit slightly from not having Saturn be so angry at you. But usually your first Saturn return when you're around 30 years old is the most difficult time in your life. But it's also the time in your life where usually a thing in your career will get cemented. Like you got your job.
My current job,
current job in your Saturn return. But you also dealt with a lot of difficulties around friends and feeling outcasted and feeling,
Story of my whole life though, Carly. Like
but probably especially so. So eventually during this king's Saturn return, he blinded and castrated William III of Sicily, which is also a very Saturn thing, because Saturn cutting, the genitals, very Saturnian. Like stopping your reproductive, putting an end to your reproductive abilities is a very thing. Ending, Saturn is all about endings. Saturn is about boundaries. Saturn is about no more. So eventually this king would eventually go on to die during his Saturn return after neutering William III of Sicily.
Unfortunate.
That's eventually what happens for him. So long story short, he lives during this incident, but let's talk about what actually happens during this incident.
Yeah.
With all of the nobles gathered on the wood floor in this meeting room, the combined weight of everyone made the floor crumble to beneath their feet to the communal latrine below. But that's not all.
Wait, there's more.
The floor of the communal latrine also broke when everyone fell
on it. Yeah.
And the lucky ones died in the fall. But many others died from a combination of drowning in human excrement or suffocating by breathing in the fumes.
Oh my God.
Suffocating.
How many people?
By breathing in the fumes. Between 60 and 100 people in total died.
Oh my God.
Henry VI remained safe on the stone alcove. He and Conrad were discussing what would be happening that day and avoided falling.
Imagine just watching this happen. You're just like standing there and all of a sudden like the floor is gone. And then you like look down and there's just everyone that was just standing next to you is now in a giant swimming pool full of poop. And
it smells so bad because what had been holding the smell back was the 2 layers of floor. But now that those 2 layers of floor are gone, the smell just like hits you, right? And
like
also
a mushroom cloud of fumes.
And I'm sure there was splashing happening. I'm sure there was like an initial splash, like as the people like plummeted.
Oh no!
Then the splash that comes back. I'm sure it got into some people's mouths because their mouths.
Oh my God. Okay. So, okay. Let's do the astrology. Let's do the astrology.
Oh no. Okay. According to okay. So King Henry, the 19-year-old king, he remained safe. He and Conrad, the old fellow, were discussing. They survived. Landgrave Louis also survived. The 30-year-old survived. According to Factinate, prior to the disaster, the king apparently was a frequent user of the phrase, "If I fail, so may I die in excrement." He before this even happened, the king would
He just like predicted it, like.
which reminds me of my favorite meme on the internet, which is the girls playing dodgeball, and the meme says, "People being funny on the internet, Apollo, the gift of prophecy," and it's like, yeah, but basically that's a lesson to all of you. Never make a joke because it will end up being true.
Just don't put that into the universe. I have a friend that says that all the time. Anytime you say something like sarcastic or like something like this, he's always like, "Don't put that in the universe."
But also, here's the thing. He had in his chart Jupiter opposite Pluto, which, I mean, that's a very Jupiter opposite Pluto thing to say. Pluto being excrement, Jupiter being like, "I will always succeed, and if I fail, then I will die in excrement." You know, Jupiter is very like bold statements, bold vision. I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to succeed, and then Pluto's like, "Poop." The two planets speaking to each other. It's brilliant. So it's always been locked into his chart that this was going to happen and that he was thinking of these things. We were not sure what the outcome of the land dispute was, but with so many nobles dying there was probably a lot of shifting in the titles in the coming years. Louis III of Thuringia would die at the age of 38 after falling ill on a ship home from the Crusades. His entrails were buried on Cyprus, and his bones were buried in a German monastery, which was a thing that they did back then that I just learned about. They would bury your entrails, your inside, your guts, basically, wherever you died. You would just like put them there. And then, but the bones, because those are more permanent and they're not going to like get all stinky, you would bring them home. You would bring them
makes sense.
home country. Yeah. Makes sense. So Conrad, who is much older, like I said, he was 60 at the time of that accident. He would go on to live to be the age of 80. And in the year 1200, while traveling home, he would die, also reconciling a dispute. So he had a long, a signature in his chart or in his life was disputes and death, which was probably something that happened a lot in the Middle Ages, I'm guessing.
I assume. Yeah.
So here's the chart of the Erfurt Latrine Disaster. We have the sun in the 12th house, which the sun in the 12th house is usually, I have a 12th house sun. It's usually deals with authority figures, not, it's kind of like the devil on your shoulder. It's like authority figures not being all that what they're cracked up to be. This also has a Mars, so the most malefic planet in the chart is in the 12th house. 12th house is also that just like the unexpected things, like you would have never thought that this would happen. That unexpected malicious thing just coming out of the blue.
Okay. Like falling into a cesspool, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And interestingly, the best part of the chart as well is Jupiter, which is also in the 12th house. So the signature of like something unexpectedly bad is going to happen. And some people will die and some people will live. That's basically sun is also ruling the 12th house too. It's Leo is the 12th house here, which is a very signature king, bringing people together, rulership sort of thing. And this is just like leadership, a situation, just not being what a great thing, actually.
Not going well.
Not going well. This is also a Mercury ruled ascendant. In this case, it's Virgo. And we have Mercury in the 11th house, which deals with groups. Interestingly, every chart that we've talked about so far has been Mercury ruled ascendant with Mercury in the 11th house. telling us that this thing is about groups. Is that interesting? We
That is
both
super
keep on
interesting.
picking the same thematic thing.
I wonder why that is. And I'm curious as we continue to record this podcast if we will continue to randomly choose
Things
weirdly related charts.
yeah. And maybe it could be because of our magical Libra Aries 0 degree axis.
0 degree
Equinox,
club.
being equinox children. We have, okay, so the 11th house is ruled by Cancer, which is a water sign. And so we're looking for, okay, who is the ruler of Cancer? And that's always going to be the moon. And we have the moon here in the 6th house of bad fortune, which was just very similar to the boat accident too. 6th house of bad fortune. So just a good idea to not do things when
Don't do things
when important planets are in the 6th house, which is the house of bad fortune. We have this chart deals with groups of people. So the ruler of the 7th house, which is the relationship with the other, the party that you're talking with in the dispute, is in the 12th house, which is that house that pulls you off course, the house of bad spirit, the house of that sudden like disaster happening. And also the in the 1st house, the ascendant, we have Saturn there, which deals with death. So just a lot of death signatures, a lot of just like a crazy, horrible misfortune related to water, related to, got Pluto in the 10th house, which deals with waste, malefic energies. So some signatures here, we can kind of like look at what does Pluto in Cancer show us throughout history. Well, the last time in our recent memory that we had Pluto in Cancer, which is a very important signature in this Erfurt Latrine Disaster chart, is we had it from 1914 to 1938. And what do we know about 1914 to 1938? There was a lot of fighting over stupid reasons. World War I, for instance. World War I, it was a war that absolutely shouldn't have happened. There was no reason for it. And ultimately, because World War I happened, that led to Hitler rising to power, genocide, and horrible things. I mean, World War II, we had to stop the Nazis, but the Nazis wouldn't have risen to power if it hadn't been for World War I. So
yeah, you also have the Great Depression in those years as well.
Yeah, definitely. So there was also just another example of fighting over stupid reasons. In 1922 was the Straw Hat Riot, which I want to do a whole episode on that eventually, which was this crazy riot where people died because back in the day when Labor Day hit, is it Labor Day? When the end of summer happened and you enter fall, you're not supposed to wear a straw hat anymore.
Okay.
You used to wear this little white straw hat, wide brimmed hat, gentlemen, during the summertime. Well, once fall hits, you're not supposed to wear a straw hat anymore. And people would go around, if you were still wearing a straw hat after summer ended, they would knock it off your head. And then dudes would reply.
That's so aggressive.
Yeah, respond by punching whoever knocked their straw hat off their head. This led to a riot in 1920
Seriously?
over straw hats.
That's dumb.
Yes. A huge brawl in New York. We also had prohibition during this period. So stupid decision to stop people from drinking alcohol, to ban alcohol.
That was with air quotes for anybody that just realized you can't see me. Stop people from drinking alcohol, air quotes.
And during this period, we also had, while Pluto was in Cancer, and this is just, we should probably pay attention for the next time Pluto will be in Cancer, which I will not be alive for, and no one will be alive. No one who's alive now will probably be alive. When Pluto's in Cancer. Maybe our Gen Z kids will be alive when Pluto's in Cancer, but this was a period where there was a rise of the KKK, rise of Nazism, rise in anti-gay sentiment too. Back in the early 1900s, things like gay relationships, even gay marriages, were pretty open actually in the early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
And really, as the rise of prohibition, the rise of the KKK after World War One,
Mm-hmm.
stupid war that shouldn't have happened in the first place, then we get that anti-gay and that very white supremacist sentiment.
So this is the same place that. So this chart that you're talking about, the signature that you're talking about, also appears in the Latrine Disaster.
Yeah, that signature of that Pluto in Cancer. So I feel some other things that are very related to that Pluto in Cancer: the sinking of the Lusitania in 1915, the Armenian genocide by Turkey, the 1916 first birth control clinic. Interestingly, that's actually a positive thing, but it relates to Cancer being motherhood, and Pluto, the decision, like, I want power. Pluto is also power. I want the decision to decide whether I want to be a mother or not. But it also corresponds to the Spanish flu, three major plagues: Spanish flu, sleeping sickness, and polio, which happened around 1918, which is very interesting because when Pluto was in Capricorn for us, which is the opposite side of Cancer, we have our three plagues. We had COVID, we had resurgence of polio for a little bit, and we had, what did we other have? Monkeypox. Had another thing too that I'm forgetting about. But yeah, there was but there was also a lot.
Measles, probably.
Yeah.
It's like all anti-vaxxer.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything returning due to anti-vaccination. Like,
yeah, during Pluto and Cancer, it was like, oh, there's all these diseases. We're gonna start vaccinating people, and then by the time Pluto takes its time to get all the way back to Capricorn, now in our lifetime, we're like, some people are like, oh, let's slack on the vaxes, and oh no, all the diseases are coming back again.
oh no, the plague.
Like a Pluto opposition thing happened. Pluto's like kind of doing the Saturn thing, left the building for a little bit. Oh, did you learn your lesson? Oh, no, you didn't. So here's the diseases again.
Well, I feel like if it wants us to learn our lesson, it should come back faster because humans have short lifespans and shorter memories.
Well, here's the thing, though. We have planets that go fast and we have planets that go slow. And we do learn from, like, Venus that goes fast. We're like, oh, we've been making the same mistake every 8 years during Venus retrograde. So we eventually throughout our life learn from those mistakes.
In theory.
In theory, yeah. And Mercury, like, oh, every 3 months we learn a little lesson from Mercury retrograde. And in theory, we learn from that. But Saturn is like, okay, the bigger lessons that take a little bit more time to learn.
Well, and then we've talked before about Pluto being generational, you know, and I think that learning as kind of a short-lived species, learning generational lessons is difficult, I think.
Yeah. We're gonna be going through this Pluto in Aquarius thing coming up next year. Pluto will be sitting in Aquarius for about 20 years. And so we're going to be learning a lot of the lessons that, again, that were learned around the founding of this country, around the ratification of the Constitution. So I think we're going to be, as Pluto goes into Aquarius and settles in there next year, we're going to be, our Constitution is going to be, did we learn the lessons that we need to learn from keeping our Constitution?
No, we didn't.
No, we didn't, because now we're suddenly taking rights away from women, and we're suddenly
legislating for. Yeah. Oh man. Oh, this is gonna go. Hey, what does Pluto in Aquarius say about late stage capitalism? Can we move on from that yet? Is that something we're gonna?
Well, we're seeing definitely capitalism
imploding,
falling, being really, people are pushing back against it in a really good way. I mean, we're seeing like the rise of the labor movement right now, which is really heartening. We shall see if the industry wins, or are the workers going to win? And if we definitely need especially as we get into artificial intelligence technology taking over, so, and dehumanizing our workforce, we need to decide, are we going to legislate and put public policy in place that protects humans, or are we going to do what we have done for previous centuries and allow technology to benefit the most wealthy and
Yeah.
allow more money and funds and resources to be funneled into the pocketbooks of the most wealthy? Or are we going to use this technology to help everyone? And
Well, see, yeah. For me, okay, so when AI like first started becoming a big thing, I obviously being a writer and a creative was very anti, but I think that ship has, I know that ship has already sailed. Like, and I do think that AI can be a powerful tool, especially as it develops further, but I wish that instead of using it to do the work of creatives, we could use it to make work not the central force of our lives. Like, but that would require like such a shift in consciousness and such a shift in the way that we like, as you're saying, like right now, it looks like it's going to be used to try to make the rich people more money. But I just wish that like we have this type of technology. Like, why don't we just use it so that we can all stop grinding all the time?
This is why we need to influence public policy, and we need to create legislation around protections for the human workforce.
Yeah.
Because all the data that's being fed into AI is human generated. And
Mm-hmm.
that art, that content, that creativity is intellectual property.
No, absolutely.
And our law does protect intellectual property.
Mm-hmm.
If but we need to have it those protections enforced, and we need to have more legislation at this point, especially at this early stage,
Mm-hmm.
protecting intellectual property rights.
No, I agree 100%. And just imagine though, like how creative could people be, and how many problems could we solve if everybody could stop like fighting to survive for a few minutes, and like stop fighting to pay the rent, and stop fighting to like eat, and just like actually like be creative. I just feel like this technology could be leveraged in such a different way than it currently is being leveraged.
But it's also our humans can leverage ourselves in a different way. We can
Yeah.
band together and uh, unionize various industries. I was encouraging my rideshare Uber driver. I'm like, you, sir, can unionize your fellow rideshare drivers. Regardless of what industry you are in, you and your fellow coworkers can unionize. And when you form a union, that is historically the most effective way of enacting social change for
Mm-hmm.
workers. And
Definitely.
that's really the only thing that's going to stand in the way between the major corporations and the extremely wealthy from using technology to funnel more extreme wealth into their own pocketbooks. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and we can't rely on legislators, because legislators are funded by the
By ultra wealthy people.
ultra
Yeah, for
wealthy
sure.
people. So we need to use collective action to
I feel like every conversation that we have always always
go back
devolves
to
into
capitalism.
anti-capitalist, which is fine. I think no matter like where you are, well, maybe not no matter where, but most people on the political spectrum, regardless, can like look at current society and be like, this isn't working for the majority of people.
Mhm.
Like, and especially the economy. Like, no matter what you blame it on, I think we can all agree that it's not ideal right now.
Mhm.
Um, and oh my gosh, I just think that there's so much more that we could be doing. But I mean, that's part of it. Part of making sure that change doesn't happen is keeping us exhausted, keeping us
Mhm.
working, keeping us fighting to pay our bills and eat. So I don't know. It's a vicious cycle.
Yep. And that is the Erfurt Latrine Disaster, 1164. And we had a fun time talking. This was really fun. I really appreciated you sharing that chart and letting me do a little detective work to figure out what the nature of that chart was. And
I love it. I love it. It's my favorite thing. Like I'm sitting here and I'm like listening and I'm like, you said that like Venus was on a boat doing drugs, and I was like, yes. Continue. We are on a boat and we're all about to die. Like,
we need to come up with a really good wrap up for our podcast episodes. But tune in to our next episode. We're going to be talking about something different. And then we are going to really try hard not to go on tangents and digressions. But I think we picked the two absolutely wrong people to not go on tangents and
yeah, I don't think that, Carly, I think this is a losing battle. But hey, I think that digressions are probably some of the most interesting parts of what we have to. We're neurospicy, right? Like it's good. It's
those of you who are watching at home, if you have any questions or comments for us, definitely drop those into whatever format we decide to accept questions or comments, because they are appreciated. We want to keep the dialogue open and going. But thank you for tuning in, and tune in next time.
Bye. Music for the show is provided by Bruno Loureiro. Follow us on Instagram at the Astrology of Terrible Things, all one word.